creating custom Pokemon for you! Welcome back, everyone, to the show where we select lucky commenters to spin a series of random wheels that give us factors for a Pokemon that we then create just for you. It's gonna be an awesome episode today, y'all. We're gonna make 3 amazing custom Pokemon as always, so I hope you enjoy. And if you end up wanting a custom Pokemon for yourself, don't forget to let me know in the comments because I'll be randomly selecting people from this video's comments for the next episode. But without further ado, let's get into the first Pokemon. And this one will be for Jay. I'm glad you liked the lore in the last episode. It was super fun to make. But anyways, Jay, let's start by getting the power level of your Pokemon, and you're going to be a Paradox. Fun. And it means that now we have to spin this wheel to see which generation of Pokemon we'll be making a Paradox form for, and it's Gen 5, my favorite. And now, of course, we'll spin this wheel that has every single Gen 5 Pokemon on it, and we got Excadrill, one of my favorite Pokemon from my favorite generation. This is amazing. Now, every Paradox form keeps at least one of its old types, so we know that it'll remain ground type, but let's still spin for a secondary type, and it's Rock. That is basically just a strict downgrade in typing, but it's still cool. And the last step before we see which Pokemon looks like, let's see if it's a past or future Paradox form, and it's past. You know, that actually makes a lot of sense with the typings. That's good. It's hammer time. Your Pokemon is Mashing Mallet, the hammering head Pokemon. In the ancient past, they didn't have the luxury of sophisticated tools like drills, so they had to make do with what they did have. And what they had was brute force. As just like the Excadrill we know today, Mashing Mallet also digs its way through the ground, but in a much more concussive way. It uses its hammer-shaped cranium to pulverize the ground beneath it, rapidly rocking up and down, tearing away at the earth with every slam. And while this does give it a subterranean traversal method, it also causes it to have a constant headache from all the force its head absorbs, which might make it the first Pokemon with CTE. In terms of stats, unlike regular Excadrill, Mashing Mallet is pretty slow, but its physical attack is insane. And for the shiny, I thought it'd be funny to give it this long flowing blonde hair. But now let's get into the second Pokemon. But before we get into the next Pokemon, just real quick, a little reminder, I am still selling the SEDI-MAT, which is a mat that comes in both desk mat and playmat sizes. It's really good quality. It's the first merch I've ever done, and if it goes well, I can do more in the future, which I would love to do. So if you're interested at all, please check out that link in my description. If not, totally cool, obviously, but they're only available until the end of next month, so if you're interested at all, please check it out. And today's second Pokemon will be for the Skeleton Man. I'm glad you liked Wormlord from the last episode. That would be a perfect nickname for it. But anyway, Skeleton, let's start by getting the power level of your Pokemon, and you are going to be a mythical. That is pretty much the rarest thing you can get. That is insane. Now, mythical Pokemon usually don't evolve, but we do still spin this wheel where you have a small chance to get some, but none this time. And now let's see what typing this mythical is going to be. Your first up is going to be the Psychic type. That's actually really good. We barely have any Psychic types in our region. And you're actually pure Psychic type because your second type was none, which is a little funny because there's definitely been a pure Psychic type mythical before. And the last step before we see which Pokemon looks like, let's see what its X factor is going to be, and it is an additional form. That is something that Mew definitely doesn't have. Lights, camera, giant leg. Your Pokemon is Cinemorph, the special effects Pokemon. This green screen inspired mythical absolutely loves the cinema. It even has the cinematic ability to transform its outward appearance into anything it wants, as if it suddenly had access to a Marvel level team of special effects artists. And while it could use this power to terrorize the world by becoming giant kaiju or invading aliens, it instead prefers to spend its time hiding away in the audiences of movie theaters across the globe, happily enjoying motion pictures all day long. But its favorite place to visit, Unova's Pokestar Studio, a forgotten side mode in Black and White 2 where players could star in all sorts of bizarre movies by battling an absurd cast of enemies ranging from ordinary people to alien fungi to a giant woman's leg. And it's these wonderfully obscure movie monsters that Cinemorph loves most. So much so that whenever it enters battle, it'll use its special effects powers to transform into one of 5 different forms based on Pokestar Studio's iconic monster. If Cinemorph has an attack-boosting nature, it'll transform into its demon form, a bellowing dark ghost-type beast made entirely of toxic smoke. This form is based on the studio Pokemon of the same name and boasts insane physical attack. However, just like all of Cinemorph's forms, once it's been knocked below half HP, the illusion collapses and it reverts back to its base form, whose stats are much more average by comparison. If Cinemorph has a defense-boosting nature, it'll transform into its door form. This version version wears the infamous black door enemy from the mysterious door of the magical land as a massive mask, while its arms resemble the serpent guardians coiled alongside the door. If Cinemorph has a special attack boosting nature, it'll transform into its monster form. Based on the terrifying tentacle alien from Red Fog of Horror, this version unleashes a barrage of crimson laser beams from each of its many eyes that no opponent could hope to dodge all of. However, if it has a special defense boosting nature, it'll become its UFO form, a colossal levitating structure inspired by invaders. This form hovers silently overhead, casting an enormous shadow over everything beneath it. But even that isn't as gigantic as its speed nature form, because that transforms Cinemorph into its MT form. Inspired by the Big Monster movie, which normally stars a robotic Tyranitar, this version instead becomes a towering cybernetic warrior built in Cinemorph's own image. In terms of stats, all the Cinemorph forms excel in their particular category, while regular Cinemorph just has 70s and everything. And for the shinies, I went with these gray colors as a reference to black and white movies. But now let's get into the third Pokemon. But before we get into the final Pokemon, it's time for the member modifier. This is the segment of the show where we take a fan favorite Pokemon from a previous episode in the series and give it a brand new upgrade. For today's episode, I selected 3 custom Pokemon that I felt were pretty underrated and had my channel members vote on one of them to give a brand new Mega Evolution. And the options were Psychonine, the clairvoyant canine, Hyminko, the flaming flamingo flamenco dancer, and Dracarch, the archmage wizard dragon. And the winner was Dracarch, which when exposed to Drakites would evolve into Mega Dracarch, whose body has been morphed by Mega Evolution energy, giving it a much longer beard and giant wings that now launch different attacks like thunderbolts, fireballs, and ice beams with every flap. Huge thank you to all my channel members, and for the shiny, I went with these gray colors as a reference to Merlin. And today's third Pokemon will be for Revryu. It's funny, a ton of the backgrounds I use are actually screenshots from WoW. There's just so much variety in the game, it's like perfect. But anyways, Revryu, let's start by getting the power level of your Pokemon, and you are going to be regular. Nothing wrong with that. And now let's see how many times your Pokemon can evolve, and you are going to get 2, which makes you a full 3-stage evolution line. Now let's see what typing your Pokemon's going to be. Your first type is the Fairy type, another rare type in our region. That is good. And Fairy Ice, I like it. And the last step, before we see what your Pokemon looks like, let's see if it has an X Factor, and none this time. This may be the only creature capable of learning the Iron Lotus. The first stage of your Pokemon is Glidesis, the Ribbon Arm Pokemon. This cheerfully stylish Pokemon loves to perform and can often be found out in the wild, putting on elaborate gymnastics and ice skating routines for any person or Pokemon willing to watch. And even the most ruthless of Tundra beasts will stop in their tracks to enjoy its adorable little show. And at level 20, it'll evolve into Axtwirl. Don't let this Pokemon's appearance fool you, because despite its cheerful demeanor, it's actually a fierce competitor obsessed with perfecting its technique in both battle and performance. Trainers who catch one should expect to find it up through all hours of the night practicing its triple axle in an attempt to land the legendary quadruple axle, a feat so difficult that in real life only one skater has ever landed one in competition. And this pursuit of the ultimate skating move is even reflected in Axtwirl's evolution method, as in order to evolve, it must use the ice type attack called triple axle and have it land all 3 of its hits 4 separate times in a row. And since triple axle is only 90% accurate, that's just a 28% chance of pulling it off. But when it does, it'll evolve into Axelate, the pinnacle of grace and strength. This agile ice acrobat can skate around the battlefield with such effortless precision that it makes even the most experienced fighters look amateur by comparison. In terms of stats, Axelate has really good physical attack as well as very good speed. And for the shiny, I went with this red color as a reference to the color that rhythmic gymnastic ribbons usually are. If you like today's episode, make sure to check out all the other episodes of the custom Pokemon series that can be found in this playlist. As always, huge thank you to all the artists that worked on today's video. They can all be found in the description, so make sure to go check them out. And I'll see you all in the next episode, but until then, peace.